It's August 4th, 1991. The USSR's first and last president, Mikhail Gorbachev, flies to his dacha in Crimea to rest after a flurry of diplomatic trips. After 6 years of Gorbachev's liberalizing reforms, the Soviet Union is falling apart. Every single republic has declared its independence or sovereignty, including Russia. There, Boris Yeltsin is in power and determined to bring the country out from under the rule of the Communist Party, which he had abandoned the previous year. Gorbachev, on the other hand, wants to keep the USSR from disintegrating by transforming it into the Union of Sovereign States, a federation in which each republic would enjoy broad autonomy. Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, and the 3 Baltic republics refused to participate in this new political project. The treaty that would replace the USSR with this new, smaller union is set to be signed on August 20th, 1991. A group of hardline Soviet officials that would come to be known as the Gang of Eight decides to put a stop to it and keep the USSR alive by force. The group includes Soviet Vice President Gennady Yanayev, KGB Chief Vladimir Khrushchev, Defense Minister Dmitry Yazov, and 5 others. On August 18, 1991, some group of 8 plotters and allies from the KGB, the Communist Party, and the military arrive at Gorbachev's dacha in Crimea. Gorbachev is given an ultimatum: declare a state of emergency, return to Moscow with the plotters and restore order in the country, or hand over power to the Vice President, Yanayev. Gorbachev refuses. He remains at his dacha, guarded by the KGB. His lines of communication with the outside world are cut. On the morning of August 19th, the coup plotters roll thousands of troops and hundreds of tanks into Moscow. Soviet radio and TV announced that a state committee on the state of emergency, consisting of the Gang of Eight, has been created, and that Gorbachev's duties will be taken over by Yanayev due to illness. At the same time, a detachment of KGB special forces arrives at Yeltsin's own dacha outside Moscow. Thousands of people take to the streets of the Soviet capital and other cities to protest against the coup. The army does not disperse the protesters. Despite the troops dispatched to Yeltsin's location, he is allowed to leave. He arrives at Moscow's White House, then Russia's Parliament building, around noon on August 19th. In what would become an iconic image, Yeltsin stands on one of the tanks deployed in support of the putsch and speaks to the crowd, denouncing the takeover as a reactionary, unconstitutional coup. The Gang of Eight declares a state of emergency in Moscow and holds its first and only press conference at 5 p.m. on August 19th, telling journalists that Gorbachev is in Crimea for relaxation and treatment. Hundreds of thousands of protesters fill the streets of Moscow, Leningrad, and other major cities, showing that the plotters' plans are already falling apart. Yeltsin says he believes the military will not use force against the people. The situation remains tense on August 20th. The Gang of Eight declares an 11 p.m. curfew in Moscow. A mechanized division with orders to enforce it moves towards the White House. Civilians swarm the armored column, trying to stop its advance. 3 members of the crowd trying to defend the White House are killed in the early hours of August 21st. Gorbachev later recognizes them as posthumous heroes of the Soviet Union. With the plotters condemned by world leaders and unwilling to break up the protests by force, the first deaths bring the short-lived coup to an end. On the morning of August 21st, Defense Minister Dmitry Yazov declares that he is quitting the emergency committee and withdrawing troops from Moscow. On August 22nd, Gorbachev returns to the capital, where Yeltsin has banned the operations of the Communist Party, which had ruled the country for 74 years. With the coup leaders arrested, the USSR is as good as dead. Ukraine declares its independence on August 24th, Belarus on the 25th. The Soviet Union officially dissolves 4 months later, putting 15 independent countries on the map. Despite Yeltsin's opposition, the coup leaders were amnestied by Russia's parliament in 1994.